Hidden Gems, episode 34. 1.21 gigawatts!
1.21 gigawatts? Great stuff!
What the hell is a gigawatt?
Welcome to Hidden Gems, a board game podcast where we review unusual, forgotten, and underappreciated board games. We're your hosts. My name is Chris.
I'm Jason.
And I'm Bill.
Thanks for listening to our show.
Yeah, welcome back.
That was fun.
Yeah, a little bit of
fun.
extra flavor to the intro.
This is a pop quiz. What is that a reference to? What could this show be about now?
If you're listening to this show, you probably know what that's a reference to, I would hope. I need to introduce my kids to Back to the Future. We've been going through an 80s stretch lately, so I just had them watch Top Gun,
Oh, wow.
because the movie's coming out.
Yeah.
And
I just
we
saw
watched
the new movie and it's great.
Yeah, I had them watching in anticipation of us going. Haven't gone yet. Really want to see it. I had them watch The Wizard because it's one of the best 80s movies of all time. I challenge you to contest me on that. We watched Alien. We've seen Predator. But we haven't done Back to the Future yet. That needs to happen.
Absolutely.
I think my kids would like that one too.
Yeah, it's funny. Well, it's an exciting day for Hidden Gems. The excitement in the room is palpable. I can feel it. Because in 3 days we leave for Origins.
We do.
And it's all anybody is talking about right now. Bill is pumped. Bill, do you have your Sailor Moon cosplay ready to go?
Dang, you let it out of the bag. I do. I can't wait.
I will say, of all the things we've got scheduled and all the things we talked about doing, out of all 7 of us, you seem the most interested in cosplay. I'm just going to throw that out
Oh,
there.
yeah. Well, it's an easy joke to go to.
Origins is upon us. Super excited. June 8th through the 12th, we're going to be in Columbus, Ohio.
That's right.
We've talked about it on the podcast before, but Jason and I have been once before.
It's funny seeing Bill and the other guys going with us who have not experienced it before.
Yeah.
Getting all pumped up. They're going to wear themselves out.
They are. There's been a lot of event planning. People are excited. I'm excited for them. But we do have a lot of scheduled events, which we're going to go through tonight and tell you where we're going to be and what we're going to be doing if you want to try to meet up with us. But it is very easy to get that event scheduling bug, for sure. Get bit by that bug.
Yeah, we'll post on the Board Game Geek Guild some of the more detailed details. Well,
Allow myself to introduce myself.
yeah, we'll post in the guild more details on the events that we're going to be at, just so we don't go through every single little thing on the show today. Chris, why don't you talk about a few of the events that you're excited about?
Yeah. I'll mention the ones that are available slots for. How about that? If you're listening to this, you may have noticed we dropped this episode a little earlier than we usually do because we're going to be in Origins on Friday. And our hopes is that maybe people that are traveling up to Origins, driving up, or in the process of traveling might be listening to this episode and might be able to meet up with us and do an activity with us. So I'll go through the things that have slots available, and we can just briefly talk about them. So the first thing we're doing on Thursday, our first scheduled event, and I'm excited about it because we've done it before, and it's a big hit with Jason. He loves this one. As much as he hates D&D,
The Monster Mash.
he's doing the Monster Mash.
The Monster
Well, I almost won the last time.
You
So
did.
That probably helped. But I don't like things just because I win them, for the record.
We'll talk more about that later. So, D&D Monster Mash is a battle royale, 16-player, every man for himself fight where you take on a random role. You could be a monster, you could be a hero, and it's just last man standing. Rolling D20s. It's super fun.
It's a huge 3D castle thing that
Yep.
everybody's moving around in.
Terrain everywhere. Everybody's just trying to outlast everybody else. And I will say, in the 10 a.m. slot on Thursday, there are 7 slots available right now. So, if you're going to Origins, sign up for Monster Mash. Join us. It'll be fun. It's number 995.
You get to kick some hidden gem ass.
That's exactly right.
I'm trying to get another Monster Mash on the schedule. If we can coordinate it, we'll get another one in there.
I think we could probably do one on Saturday. We had a living dungeon thing where we're going to go through a dungeon with foam swords. And
You had that.
I had that. It was going to be fun, and it got canceled. So maybe Saturday at some point. 2 p.m. on Thursday, Starship Horizons Adventures. I know you're excited about
I'm
this, Bill.
super excited about that. I have high hopes, and I hope I'm not disappointed. But yes.
Yeah, it's kind of like Star Trek Bridge Captain, I guess, where we're members of a crew and we have to try to survive in space. It's kind of RPG/electronic adventure.
Yeah.
So that'll be fun, I think. One spot available, item number 3691.
I won't be there for that.
Such a wet blanket, Jason. Have a little fun.
Seriously.
I have my limits on role-playing.
It's not necessarily role-playing. I think it's going to be a mission you got to accomplish, right?
I think we've got you role-playing one time this weekend.
Maybe.
You will. You're going to have to. All right, 6 p.m., Escape the Wizard's Tower is an escape room we're doing. Love escape rooms. 1 slot available. If you want to help Hidden Gems survive an escape room, that number is 4037.
Otherwise, there might just never be any more episodes.
That's right. We just may never get out. All right, Friday. Bill, I'm interested to hear your thoughts on this. I don't know if you've looked this up. So Chris Battles, one of our good friends, is going with us to Origins. He's kind of like our RPG guru. Before he moved to Ohio, he was all into these super weird role-playing games back when we used to play them a lot more. And we signed out for a role-playing game called Misspent Youth, which is basically a futuristic tale about angsty, disgruntled youth who are pissed off with our oppressive government.
Sounds perfect for Bill.
Right. I thought we were signed up to be the Golden Girls on something. Now I want to be B. Arthur. But, okay, we'll do this.
I'd be down with Golden Girls. I'm a little worried about this one, to be honest, but I'm trusting Chris that he knows what he's doing and he knows what he's talking about.
Right. It's going to be a Welcome Back Kotter episode, I think.
Exactly. There is one spot available in this group, so if you want to role play with us as an angry, disgruntled teenager,
Rorschach.
sign up for Misspent Youth RPG, number 4134. And then the last thing I'll mention that has spots available is on Saturday at 4 p.m. we're playing The Crew, Mission Deep Sea, as a demo.
Oh, yeah.
Jason loves The Crew. We all love The Crew.
Although I'm ashamed that we made it to Mission 49 and never actually
We totally did. We did 49 out of 50 missions, and then Baglio moved to Florida, and we never finished the 50th mission. Can you believe that?
Yeah, so some of our longer-time listeners might remember Mike Baglio was on an episode long ago.
Our least listened to episode that I remind him of. The Hungarian Tarok.
Oh, that was the Tarok episode.
Yeah.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah.
There are 3 spots available. This would be a good chance if you don't want to do weird things that we're doing, like Misfit Youth. You can just come hang out with us and play The Crew, cooperative trick-taking card game, on Saturday at 4 o'clock. That's event number 2983. And that's pretty much it. There are a couple of things we're doing. We're playing Vagrant Song on Saturday. Jason and I are. I'm pretty excited about
Playing some Cat in the Box. I know very little about, but there's a ton of slots open for that one. I don't know the event number, so I will post it in the guild.
Yeah, let me know, because I'd like to sign up for a few more things.
Yeah, we'll be doing some more demos for sure.
We will be at Jenny's Ice Cream across the street, probably daily.
Oh, I ate Jenny's for breakfast at Origins.
That's hysterical.
I was telling Bill about that while you were out of the room earlier. He's never heard of Jenny's Ice Cream.
What?
So he's about to be introduced.
Oh, yeah, I'm excited.
For anybody out there who
love ice
doesn't
cream.
know Jenny's Ice Cream, it is available in grocery stores now, and it is
expensive.
incredible. It's very expensive.
Yeah.
They started in Columbus, Ohio.
Okay.
And so it's based out of there, and it's quite good.
Yeah, it is really good. Like I said, I walk over to the food hall every morning and get a waffle cone for breakfast because
Breakfast of Champions.
Who's going to stop me?
I will mention Cameron and I are going to do the leather working.
Oh,
So
that's
we
right.
we will have leather bracers. So I will be doing my cosplay somewhere. So look around for the guys with leather bracers on.
Oh, man.
Are you going to be wearing them throughout the
Oh,
con?
of course.
Well, I mean, you have to.
Yeah.
You need to make an infinity gauntlet or something. I want some gems studded in
There
there.
we go. That's a good idea.
That'll be fun. So yeah, those are some events we're doing. One other thing I'll say, I meant to mention this at the beginning, is we'll also just be playing games in the gaming hall. Would love for anybody just to please come up, approach us, introduce yourselves. I'm going to be totally honest with you. I will be ecstatic if just one person comes up to us.
Yeah, if anybody actually knows who we are, that's a win.
That would be a huge win. Play a game with us. Teach us hidden gem. That would be awesome.
Oh, yeah.
We'd love it if people would teach us their hidden gem games. Maybe we can get a mention for it on the podcast.
How can listeners contact us if they're there? I'd say probably just post a message in the guild, maybe.
Yeah.
And we'll keep track of the guild every once in a while we're up there.
For sure. And if it's anything like last time we were there, we'll probably be sitting at tables in the open gaming area closest to the convention hall side. So the convention hall doesn't open until Thursday, but the gaming hall's open on Wednesday. So we'll be in those tables closest to the convention hall, the exhibitor hall, I guess I should say. And we'll be wearing our Hidden Gems t-shirts. We'll be wearing our merch, and hopefully you recognize us, and we would love to meet you.
Well, now that we've thoroughly bored everyone who knows nothing about Origins and is not going, we do have a cocktail tonight. What's our cocktail for the night, Chris?
So as we mentioned at the start of the show, when we did our little homage to Back to the Future, we're doing games with a time traveling theme this episode. So for this particular episode, my cocktail is the Time Traveler.
Oh,
Nice.
Very original.
there you go, yeah.
Is this a classic cocktail, or is this...
It's not. I think this is a specialty cocktail. This is actually a cocktail that is made for specifically Appleton Estate rum. Well, it's a rum-based cocktail.
I've been to Appleton Estate.
You have been.
Yeah, it was an adventure that I will explain on a future episode.
I've heard this story a few times, and it always amazes me that you survived it, to be quite honest. So if you want to follow it to the letter, it's 1 1/4 ounces of Appleton Estate rum, 3/4 ounce vodka, half an ounce of triple sec, 2/3 ounce lime juice, 1/3 ounce lemon juice, and 1/3 ounce simple syrup, shaken on ice and served with a lime garnish. That is a time traveler.
Kind of like a gimlet.
A little gimlet hardly has anything in it, right? Isn't gimlet gin?
It's gin or vodka plus lime.
Plus lime, yeah.
Simple syrup.
So yeah, maybe a souped up gimlet. Yeah.
It is really good, by the way. I like citrusy drinks, and it's got a lot to it.
Yeah, it is good. I enjoy it as well. So yeah, featured cocktail, time traveler.
All right. Well, it's been forever, I think, since
Been a hot minute.
Yeah, since we've done any mailbag questions. We honestly haven't had a ton. So if you guys out there, you have questions, please post them in the guild. We'd love to answer them. But we do have a couple that have probably been sitting out there for a while.
Yep.
So we're gonna dive in. We have 2 questions actually from Jonas Thorson. His first question is, which is apropos for what we were just talking about, which is your favorite hidden gem drink so far?
Okay.
The one I have in my hand.
Really?
Well, that's an alcoholic question.
That just totally flew over my head, and I'm embarrassed that I didn't get that.
It's funny, we were talking about this before we started, about how difficult it is to flip through the Rolodex of drinks that I've had, and I've had 50% of what you guys have had. Mm-hmm. I will go with the French 75. I thought that was really, really good.
Yeah.
I had forgotten about that one.
I like champagne or Prosecco-based drinks. They have a fanciful feel to them. That's a good one.
Yeah. Well, that was good.
That was our 2-player episode, right?
That was our 2-player
We played
episode.
Victor and Glory Napoleon.
Yeah.
Oh, that's why I don't remember that
Yeah,
one.
you didn't have it. You weren't invited to
Makes
that
sense.
exclusive club.
Exactly.
Cool. Well, yeah, I had a hard time thinking back through them as well, but I think I would have to say the one that you made, I don't even remember the name of it, honestly, but it had cucumber in it.
The Flash.
The Flash, that's what
This
it was.
is the one I thought you were going to pick. This is the only one you've contacted me on after the show and said, hey, how do you make that drink?
And I did make it afterwards. It was kiwi and cucumber, which I hate cucumber, but this drink is amazing. Tastes like spring in a glass.
Yeah.
So.
The Flash, that would have been our real-time games when we talked about Falling and Nine Tiles Panic and all that.
Yep.
Cool.
So for me, I picked the Jägermeister Old Fashioned.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that was good too.
Yeah, so this one surprised the heck out of me because I like old fashions, and I don't like my old fashions to be messed with. I just like them normally how they are. And Jägermeister, I don't think I've appreciated it fully until now because I just haven't used it a lot over the years. It's associated with college parties, I think. But it's actually a very nice liqueur. It's got a lot of interesting flavors to it. And that Jägermeister Old Fashioned was really good. We covered that one in our second Reiner Knizia episode, actually, is when we talked about that one. So that one would be mine, I think. I've had it a few times since then.
Cool.
So next mailbag question, also from Jonas Thorson. What are the chances for videos of your plays? This is actually a pretty easy question to answer, I guess.
Is
So
it?
I'm going to throw it over to you, Chris.
No. Bill, you start this question.
Well, I will say I spent I don't know how many hours, lots and lots of hours working on Twitch TV to get things going in here. And I think there's a Stranger Things upside down gate somewhere. It is here in Chris Alley's game room because it absolutely crushes whatever internet electronic signal you have out here, because I could get it working at my house and had like 3 or 4 cameras going, and we were going to set up to do some kind of fun gameplay nights, but we just couldn't get a signal out here. I even ran a hardwire outhill.
Yeah, we had a 100-foot Ethernet cable running out the window of my house into the game room, and we had issues.
The curse of the game room.
I think I'm on an ancient burial ground or something. There's something weird going on around here
Absolutely
with
true.
electronic signals.
So if we ever get out of this room to do anything, Chris cries to leave this place to go anywhere else. It's true. You have to knock him out and drag him away. But anyway, I guess it's a possibility. I've done some legwork to figure out how to do it. We just have to choose to do it.
We've done a few rules explanations, one or two of which are up on YouTube, but we've not done a great job of getting that content out there thus far, and those are obviously a lot shorter than recording an entire play session. So
that's true.
And I will say I don't think it's entirely technological issues. I think that's part of it, but I think for me, how do I say this? It's hard enough just keeping up with the podcast. You know what I mean? True. I go back and forth in my mind about expanding and trying to make the podcast bigger and greater and doing more, and maybe we should be doing more of that. But I think my primary concern right now is just to make the podcast the best that it can possibly be. And I think we're on that track. I think we make a good podcast, if I can humbly say so. I think we have been doing a good job. I'm happy with it. And I'm worried that if we start to put our hands in too many jars, quality might start to fall off. Because honestly, at times, it's all we can do just to get this out in a timely fashion at a level that we want it to be.
Right.
And so I'm just not sure if it's ever going to happen. But anyway, go ahead, Jason.
No, I was just going to say, we talked about that last week when we announced that we were going back to a 3-week schedule just for the summer. Again, just to reemphasize, just for the summer. But yeah, it's a lot of effort just to get the editing and everything else done to make the podcast sound the way that it does. And we love it. We enjoy doing it.
For sure.
But trying to take on some of that additional content sometimes just feels overwhelming. But we will do our best to try to figure out the black hole that is Chris's game and see if we can get something going. All right. Next mailbag question is from John Rogers. So he asks, which gaming genres do you suspect hold the most hidden gems for the average modern gamer? War games, abstracts, Euros, etc. I'm going to throw this over to Chris first.
Okay.
Because I need some time to think about it.
I've got a good answer, I think. So I'm going to go with games by Asian designers.
Ooh, yeah, that's good.
Mm-hmm. I feel like that games by Asian designers, Japanese designers, Taiwanese, Korean designers, they always think so outside of the box.
Code of Nine.
And that's exactly right. So Code of Nine was designed by Bakafire, who
Nine Tiles Panic.
Nine Tiles Panic. And there are some games that have come into prominence recently. So Sashi and Sashi is really hot right now. That's Let's Make a Bus Route, Wind the Film, In Front of the Elevators, Remember Our Trip. So they're starting to catch on. But I can tell you that there are many games by Asian designers that look super interesting to me, and they don't get a lot of traction here in the States. And I think people would really enjoy them. They always have neat themes, neat mechanisms. And just as a little spoiler, we're going to be doing episodes in the future featuring these games because I think they're that cool.
Cool. Well, I will say the one that came to my head, and this is, I don't know, maybe it's a little iffy, but it bridges what you just said a little bit. I'm going to say card games. Because I think that card games get overlooked. There's obviously a huge following of certain types of gamers who love card games and follow them and go after them. But I think your average gamer who's looking at the latest and greatest on Instagram and BGG is looking at all of the hotness and the new fancy miniatures games and all of that stuff. And I feel like card games can sometimes get overlooked or treated as though they're second class type games.
Totally agree.
To bridge into what you were saying, I'm super excited about American Bookshop, which is a game that's on its way to my house at the moment. But it's an Asian publisher card game that's super unique. And hopefully we can get that on the show at some point.
For sure. You know, we always give Baglio a hard time about our Tarok being the least listened to episode because he was on it. But it's really just because we made the mistake of, in our title, saying Tarok and other card games. Mm-hmm. And I think people were just like, skip. Yeah. You know, I don't know what it is, but I'm telling you, there are some great games out there. Teach you Jekyll and Hyde is an awesome game.
Oh, yeah, it is. I'm going to be maybe a little more specific, or at least a subset of what you're talking about, because I thought of drafting games that's kind of through card games. Mm-hmm. I know that shows up as an engine mechanism in other types of games, but I just think there's a lot of feeling that you're in control or angst that you have. This is what I have in my hand. This is what I want. I know what my neighbor wants, and so I have to decide how that's going to play out. And so I just think there's a lot of room to explore what drafting looks like. I also thought about card game engine building like Century Spice Road. I think there's just a lot of satisfaction of being able to create an equation or a formula engine that helps you achieve your goals. It's
better than everybody else.
Better than everybody else. Right. I just think there's room to be creative in that space as well.
Agree.
Cool. All right. Well, last question for today. Also from John Rogers. Which board game genre do we want to dig more into? War games, abstracts, Euros, etc.
So for me, this one was pretty easy. It's abstract strategy games. I feel like I've been getting into abstract strategy games more in recent years because I find that I'm gravitating towards games that have simpler rule sets, but with high strategy and minimal luck. That's just kind of where I'm going, and that's a lot of abstract strategy games. The thing about abstract strategy games is they're not thematic, right? They don't have a catching theme. It's just wooden bits on a board. But for me these days, that isn't as important, so I'm excited about digging into some more abstract strategy games. I found a website recently. It's a company in Europe called Gerhard's. I found it because we're going to be reviewing a game called Mixtor soon on the podcast. But it took me to their website, and they have all of these beautiful wooden games. They look like what you would put on your coffee table. Well, not on our coffee table, because Talia would never let me have a board game on our coffee table. But if you wanted to do that, they look like display or showroom pieces. They're beautiful. They also made Tintas. That's one you may have heard of, or Trianguli. Anyways, check out this website. Really cool-looking wooden abstract games that I'm probably going to pick up a few of, for sure.
Cool.
Nice.
When I read this, I had thought about your birthday weekend and the dudes on the map, because it's been a long time since I played those. And
you got bit by that Ankh bug.
I did get bit by the Ankh bug. And yes, I won, and that plays hugely into it. that I liked it. I want to play more in that space. The other was I've purchased XCOM, the board game, and had some people over the other night, and it's a co-op game that has an app on your phone. And the first night we played, we all got our asses handed to us in a teacup. I mean, we tried to play 2 or 3 scenarios, and they just wiped us out. Then I came back for another night, and we talked a little bit about new strategies and stuff like that, and we ended up winning one, but it was just tooth and nail fighting it out, and it was just such a fun experience. And I was thinking back to you and Cameron talking about your D&D nights, right? We had those brother-in-arms feeling of overcoming this impossible odds, and so anyway, I'd like to do a few more co-op games that are like that, really require strategy and overcome captaining, some of those things that
the quarterbacking issue,
right. And the other one is the one against many. I love Betrayal. I think if you were going to rate it on our show, it would probably get a 3 because so many of the missions are broken. It is bad for captaining. But one of the things I was going to say about coming here, we are so blessed with a good gaming group, right?
Yeah, for sure.
And I want to say to people who are listening that I was invited like 5 years ago to come over here. Loris asked me and said, hey, you want to come over? There's a guy's a doctor. He's really cool. And I was intimidated. Wow, he's a doctor. He must be really smart. It's like,
fooled you.
Exactly.
Not cool.
Right. So I didn't come for a bunch of years, and I just totally regret it of those years that I didn't do it. So if you're like
all that missed Bill potential,
that's right.
It makes me sad.
It makes me sad too. But I just want to encourage people. I'm kind of a closet introvert, I think, with an extrovert exterior. So if you feel that way, get out there and get your gaming group. But
for sure.
Anyway, I think that influences some of the games that we play here, because we will come, and some of the games I think are crappy. If you're doing it with the right people and having a good time, it's awesome. It's just a fun night.
Yeah.
So
the group's important in those for sure.
Yeah, for sure. I think for me, the one category that comes to my mind is a category that I haven't dug into, and I probably mentioned this on the podcast before, but it's a category I haven't dug into mainly because of the limitations of reality, which is 18xx.
Yeah, this would be my number 2.
Yeah, I've probably played maybe 3 18xx games total, and that's just because the amount of time that it takes to play them is significant.
Prohibitive for our lives,
Yeah, but I've really enjoyed diving into that space. I'm terrible at them, especially the stock management part of it, which is kind of the whole game. But I love playing 18xx games, but just don't have the bandwidth to do it right now. So maybe someday, if I have more bandwidth, I'll get more into it.
If you could time travel, you could go back, play a little
18xx,
come back.
True.
Maybe we can time travel forward to retirement.
Right. Cool. Well, those are our mailbag questions for this week.
Keep them coming, folks. We enjoy answering them. We weren't answering them because we didn't think they were interesting. We've just had a lot of nerdy stuff to talk about recently, and they just kind of got pushed back a little bit. But I love answering them. I think they give us some space to talk about some pretty cool stuff.
Thank God we didn't talk about Elden Ring.
That's right.
Please write in more in the mailbag.
Exactly.
Chris, what do you think are the best features of Elden Ring?
Please don't ask that. All right. Well, I think that's all we got for today. So let's get into the games, huh?
All right, let's do
it. In the world of Legacy, Gears of Time, the course of history is maintained by the operators of the ancient machine. As an Aquatech, the machine binds you to the present while you travel back through time. Charged with influencing the activities of the past, you are resolute in ensuring that the technological advancement of the world remains intact. You, however, are not alone. Profiteering adventurers, crazed scientists, and temporal pirates are competing to influence the invention and discovery of these very same technologies. Cleverly navigating the timeline, efficiently influencing the growing chains of technologies, and skillfully adapting to your opponent's actions are key to returning to the present with the greatest legacy, claiming victory over your rivals.
Nice. What were you going for there, Bill?
Something not my voice.
What is an Aquatech?
That's a great thing. An antiquitect.
Antiquitect.
Antiquitect. God, I used to be so good at reading things. Antiquitect. I can redo that. As an antiquitect. I'm sure you're going to cut that back in.
It's too late, Bill.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, sure, Mr. Yashoslavath.
All right. Legacy. Gears of Time. Published in 2012 by Floodgate Games, most notably known for Sagrada.
Oh,
Really?
Yeah.
interesting.
That is fantastic.
Which I don't love, as
No, you
everybody
don't.
knows.
Same designer?
It is not the same designer.
Okay.
Interestingly, this is one of Floodgate's first published games pre-Sagrada.
This was a Kickstarter, wasn't it?
It was a Kickstarter. It was one of the first Kickstarters. Yeah, or an early Kickstarter for sure.
Man.
At the time of this recording, its BGG ranking is 2,513. Designer of this game is Ben Harkins. He doesn't have any other really notable designs. There's one other one you might have heard of called Epic Resort, which the theme of that game is you're running a vacation resort for tired fantasy heroes.
Nice.
I love it.
Is that part of the Epic series? of
No,
games?
no, it's just its own thing. I never played it. All right, brief little summary for Legacy Gears of Time. In Legacy Gears of Time, the players are traveling back in time competing with one another to influence the invention and discovery of the world's greatest technological advancements. The board is composed of a linear timeline that will initially go back in time anywhere from 4 to 6 steps or spaces, depending upon the number of players. Each round, players will get 4 turns, and players can do up to 4 things each turn. First, the player can move their pawn as far as they like to the left on the timeline. However, once moved, they cannot move their pawn back to the right for the rest of the round, only to the left or farther back in time. Players move their pawns back in time in order to establish technologies. Each step in the timeline has a limit on how many techs can be established in that step, with progressively more techs being allowed as you move further back in time. Each tech has a cost associated with it, which must be paid in cards discarded from your hand. The same number of cubes will then be added to the card, denoting ownership of the card. If a player has the most cubes on a card at the end of a round, they will score the number of points that card is worth. Interestingly, if that tech feeds into another card found later in the timeline, the earlier tech will score points again when that card scores. So for example, there's a card called Writing. Writing is a fundamental tech. It has no requirements and it scores like 2 points if you control it. However, there's another card in the game, Cartography, that requires writing. So that card will not score if writing is not present somewhere on the board prior to the cartography card. But if it is, it will score, and the person that owns the writing card will score points for writing again. Okay? Very important to understand that. Once the card scores, whoever has the most cubes on the card removes one of those cubes from the card to their own personal supply. As a third action, players can play those cubes from their own personal supply onto any already placed card on the timeline, as long as their player pawn is present in the same column that the card is in. Players will do this in an attempt to gain control of other players' higher scoring point cards. As a fourth action, the players can draw 2 cards from the draw deck, look at them, and then choose one to keep while discarding the other. The player will mostly be drawing more technology cards. However, there are a few special fake cards in the deck that can be played on a player's turn as a free action. These cards have special rule-breaking abilities that the players can utilize to further meet their goals. Right, Jason?
Oh, yeah.
At the end of each round, the player pawns will return to the present day, so all the way back to the right, and the timeline will extend by 1 column, opening up new spaces to play cards. Also, any tech cards that had no influence cubes on them during scoring will be removed from play. The game will continue on in this way for 4 rounds, and then at the end of the 4th round, the player with the most points will be the winner. That's generally how you play Legacy Gears of Time.
Nice job.
Thank you.
Yeah, good job.
Stole that rules explanation from Jason today.
That was supposed to be mine, man.
I woke up from a nap on the couch, and Jason was like, I'm doing Legacy today, right? And it was like 45 minutes before we were supposed to come over, and I was like, actually, you're doing Chrononauts.
Yeah, so if the explanation for Chrononauts sucks today, blame
Chris's
Chris.
fault.
It's not my fault.
It's always my fault. All right, so for an introductory question for this game, it's going to be the same for all these games, actually. So obviously, the theme we're talking about today is time traveling, and time traveling themes, they're kind of hit and miss, according to a lot of people in board game circles. There are a lot of people that say that time traveling games still haven't been done well, that it's a hard theme to pull off. I would disagree with that, because I think Anachrony is a pretty good game that has time traveling theme that executes it well. However, we're not reviewing Anachrony tonight. We're reviewing these other 3 games. So my question to you all is, do you feel like this game felt like a time traveling game? Did you feel like you were going back in time on the timeline? and changing things to meet your purposes in the future. Did you get that feel from it?
I would say that I think I did for sure. It's interesting that you brought up Anachrony, because I actually had that in my notes as an example of a game that claims to be a time traveling game that I don't really think does it well.
Really?
Like,
wow. Thematically, I think it does.
Thematically, the game is full of theme, right? It has so much art and backstory and all this stuff, and I enjoy the game for sure. But the time travel aspect of Anachrony is basically a loan system. Like,
right, but that's cool,
I'm
right?
going to loan myself
yourself from the past, right?
Yeah, but that's all just the backstory, right? It has nothing to do with the mechanic. The mechanic is I'm going to take a loan of this one resource, and then I'm going to pay it back later in the game.
Yeah.
Right?
Or and if you don't, you create an anachronism or something.
Sure. Yeah. Whatever. Right?
I think it's all right.
I think Anachrony is a great game, by the way, but I don't think that the time travel mechanic shines through particularly well, aside from just the story that's around it. In this game, I thought that there are parts of it that don't make sense from a time travel perspective, like the fact that certain technologies drop off the map after time, they atrophy, and we just forget logic, and we forget how to write, and you have to rebuild those technologies. That doesn't make any sense to me. But going back and manipulating control of a card, adding additional control cubes, and maybe you're influencing the formation of that technology to your advantage, or going back and creating a technology earlier in the timeline than another one, which negates the later one. That seems really thematic to me. If I'm a time traveler and I'm trying to manipulate technology to my advantage, what would I be doing, right? I would be going back and inventing these technologies before they were invented so that I get the
credit for them, right?
Or going back and manipulating how it happened to my benefit, right? And that felt thematic to me, I thought.
Okay.
So it's funny because I feel a little bit the other way, because I felt like the engine and the mechanics of it was kind of get as far left as you can, get your technology down to make the people to the right of you lose their tech, place it close enough to the tech that you need so that somebody's not going to do that to you, right? I can feel the time travel part of it in hindsight, but as I was playing it, I didn't. As I was playing the cards, it felt very rote, and then I had some rules that I was playing out. Of the games that we are going to talk about tonight, I think this is the least time travel feely one that we had.
Interesting.
It's interesting.
Yeah, I think for me, I definitely get what they were trying to do here. I agree, Jason. I see the theme they're trying to capture, but I do agree with Bill on this one as well. I didn't feel like the time travel theme came across very strongly in this game, and the reason why is this game just felt more like a Civ game to me.
Mm-hmm. It is very tech tree.
Yeah, and I get that they're trying to manipulate Civ tech through moving through a timeline, but all I kept thinking was, man, this feels like a Civ game, because I need writing to have cartography, to have printing press, to have whatever, and it just felt like I was playing a Civilization game. However, I do think the timeline is interesting. I do want to talk a little bit more about the timeline before we move on, because I think obviously it's the centerpiece of the game. So I really enjoyed the tension surrounding the timeline, specifically regarding moving left in the timeline. Okay. If it wasn't clear from the rules or from our discussion thus far, you can't have two of the same card on the board at one time. Okay, you can't have two printing presses on the board at once. So the one that's further to the left or occurred earlier in time supersedes the one to the right. So as Bill was mentioning, you feel this constant pressure to want to move farther back in time faster to establish those technologies earlier so that you don't lose them. They're safer to the left. What's interesting about this game, though, is it adds that additional action of where you can drop cubes on your cards or other players' cards to retake control of them, and you can only do that in the column you're in. So if you rush to the left, all of your cards to the right of you are now at risk of being overtaken by your opponents. So you're constantly trying to decide, do I go back now and try to jump on this really good card or establish this tech, or do I hang back a little bit? And there's a little bit of game of chicken that goes on there amongst the players. What did you guys think about that?
Oh, I liked it. To me, that was the game, right? To get your influence pieces and decide when and where you're going to drop those. That was a game that played in parallel to dropping your tech. Either taking something that was important to somebody else or a high score, or making sure all the technologies were in place to fulfill something like the internet. I enjoyed that part.
Yeah, I think the same thing. That combined with the fact that the number of cards in each row is limited, I think adds an additional tension to that. Maybe I want to try to get a really high level tech down on the board, so I have to slow play. I have to, move slowly down the timeline to put in the high level tech and then the next one underneath it that needs to support that. But if I do that too slow, then I get to the end of the timeline and I need to drop a fundamental tech that feeds into all of those, and now all the slots are taken, right? I think you did that to me, or tried to, one of the games, Chris. Just drop techs that you didn't even really need. just to fill up the timeline so that I wouldn't have a spot to put something that I really
Stymie
needed.
you, yeah.
Yeah, and so it adds in that additional dimension of not only are you trying to get there to drop your control cubes, but you're also trying to get these higher level technologies down. And in order to do that, you have to incrementally do it, and you're planning in reverse. You're putting your end result down and then having to plan backwards from there. But if you do that too slowly, you're going to end up stuck by the time you get to the end.
Yeah, and I'm glad you guys mentioned the higher level techs because they can seem very powerful, and they are. Like the internet is worth 10 points, I think, if you can get it down. And that's a lot. But what's really cool about this game is maybe you get a card like writing that's only worth 3 points, but if writing feeds into 2 other cards that are on the board, that card is worth 9 points, right? So it's not as if the higher power cards are necessarily worth more. They can be, but some of these more basic cards can be worth a lot of points too. I think in our last game we played, there was actually a lot of fighting over writing.
Right.
Because it was so valuable, and it was just a fundamental card. Just the basic tech, right? I think it's cool. And again, that's another thing that tempts you to run to the left quickly because you're like, I kind of want to get writing. But what are you giving up if you're running to the left, right?
One of the things that I thought was really fascinating about this game that I wanted to point out, and you kind of touched on it a little bit with the high-level cards and the low-level cards being different point values. Like the high-level ones are worth a lot. The low-level ones can get hit a lot because of the number that feed into them. But I thought it was fascinating how the game creates fragility around the high-level techs, right?
Yes.
So they're worth a ton of points. But in one game, I got 2 of them in my hand, and I was like, "This is awesome!" Because there are only 3 top level techs in the game, and there's only 1 card of each of them.
Yes.
And so I had 2 of them in my hand, and I was like, "I'm gonna crush this game!" And I put both of them down, and then I felt like I was one of those guys trying to keep all the plates spinning.
Yeah.
Right. Because as soon as you put one of those down, you're now responsible for making sure that you're keeping this whole tech tree underneath of it alive, and everybody knows that you want to keep that whole tech tree alive. And they're doing everything they can to just ignore cards, right? And making you have to spend your cubes to keep them alive.
Which you can't.
Right? Because the cards, I think we explained it, but if a card at the scoring part of the round doesn't have any cubes on it anymore, it falls off the board.
Yeah.
Like we just forget logic.
And that happens before you start counting up points.
Right.
Yeah.
And so as soon as you put one of those big cards down, everybody knows that you're getting all those points. And they can do other things to you to stymie your ability to claim all the additional technologies underneath it that are required to make it score points.
Yeah.
And I thought that was pretty cool.
That's cool.
I think I did that in a couple of the games that we played and did not win because of it. Because I just get greedy. I'm like, I got all these cool techs. I'm going to put them all down on the board, and then I can't support any of them.
You're like, you need a telescope for that tech? Well, I'm not going to put a cube on it.
Yeah.
Well,
Too bad.
You fulfilled everything, and then we have these 4 fate cards that I don't know if you mentioned in the rules or not. I think
We have to talk
There
about
are
the
6 fake cards, but yeah, this is a good segue into cons. Because this has to be discussed.
I was like, well, I'll just ask the general question. Jason, how did you feel about the fate cards?
Oh, man. So the fate cards are such a cool idea in theory. So there are 6 fate cards.
Yeah.
I love 5 of those 6 fate cards.
I agree.
There's one, however, unfortunately, that I think is horrible.
The not what we hoped for card.
Yeah, the not what we hoped for card. Basically can be played by whoever holds it and doesn't even cost an action.
Yeah.
So it can just be played on any tech on the board, and it just negates that tech for the scoring round. I think that this is a terrible mechanic because not only is it a huge take that element in the game, but it's an unnecessary one.
Yes,
the game
agreed.
has mechanisms built into it to play defense. You can put additional control cubes on a card to overtake it. You can snipe a technology by building that technology earlier in the timeline. I guess aside from the top level ones where there's only 1 card of it. Mm-hmm. But the game is providing you mechanisms to combat this stuff. This card wasn't needed.
Yeah.
And in one of the games that we played, Chris somehow managed to get this card, and there's only 1 in the deck, but he got it 3 times in a row.
Yes, I did.
And played it on me every single time. And I lost like 20 points because of it. And
yeah, it helped me win.
So that really just left a sour taste in my mouth, honestly. I feel like cards like that just aren't necessary in games that are not meant to be as take that as that felt.
As much fun as it was to play that card on you over and over again and just see your countenance fall over as many times as I played it, I will say I totally agree with you. Cards like this have no place in games like this. This reminded me a lot of when we reviewed Freya's Folly, and we talked about that thief card. And how scared people were of that card, and it felt out of place in that game, and it feels out of place in this game. And the reason for that is it's the only take that mechanism present in the whole game. I draw a distinction between playing offensively and hindering somebody versus a card that's just like, you don't score points, right? Mm-hmm. It just seems so horribly out of place in the game that I think if you play this game, you just need to remove it from the deck.
Right.
Just don't use it. The other ones I think are interesting and can be somewhat situational, which again I think creates an interesting decision space, because you might think, why would you not always play your fake cards? But sometimes they're not immediately useful. Mm-hmm. So do you just use them as currency to play a card? Mm-hmm. Or do you hold them and let them gum up your hand? I thought that was good. I like that. But I agree, this one card, just don't use it. Bad.
Yeah. I had 2 fake cards, I think, the whole time, and I ended up using them both to pay for other cards because I just didn't need them at the time.
And that's totally reasonable. Yeah. But in the right circumstance, it can be really helpful.
Oh, yeah.
Right? So, yeah, I think that was good.
All right, well, let's move on to final thoughts. Bill, you want to kick us off?
Sure. I like this game, and I'm a sucker for civilization tech tree kinds of games. I loved how the timeline moved between turns. I loved how you played the cards. I liked how the cubes worked and how they timed out over time. I'll agree with you guys about the Nullify card. It was absolutely too strong, and do take it out. And you could conceivably take out all the fake cards, but
sure,
because there's a lot of strategy here to be had. It's pretty easy to learn. It's a fairly fast game. So I'm going to give it a 4. I'd love to play it again. And I think there's a strategy to develop and evolve over time with this game. Liked it.
Cool. Yeah, I think for as much as I was belly aching over this game the last time we played it, my final ratings here might be surprising to you.
It was justified belly aching. You did get picked on a lot there.
It definitely was. But yeah, I think there are so many interesting things at play in this game. There's so much tension around that only move left concept. What cards do I use for currency? What cards do I actually hold back and play? Do I go for the big cards? Do I go for the small cards that feed into the big cards? I really enjoyed the mechanics of this game. I do hate that one card. I wish it wasn't in the game, but I think that you could play this game very easily without it, and I don't think that it would break anything. So I have 2 ratings for this game. My rating for this game with that card taken out is a 5.
Okay.
I really, really enjoyed this game. It's quick, like you said, Bill. It's easy to learn. Really enjoyed it. With that card in the game, I'm still going to give it a 4 because I think it's a good game. And aside from that one game where you managed to get the same card 3 times and play it on me 3 times in a row, I didn't have that experience every time we played it because that random set of circumstances didn't happen. So I'm still going to give it a 4 even without that. But a solid 5 for me. I really enjoyed this game with that slight modification.
Nice. Interesting. I don't have a whole lot more to add here. I agree with you guys. Despite not feeling very time travel-y, I did like this game quite a bit. I loved that tension of deciding how far to go back on the timeline when to pull the trigger, when to jump back, where to stop, trying to snipe people's cards. Fun. You can play aggressively in this game, and it feels very fair, and it feels very strategic, with the exception of that one freaking card. Just don't use it. You don't need it. Just throw it out, and it's a good game outside of that. So for me, I am also going to give this game a 4. Look forward to playing it more.
Cool. Where can we find it?
Yeah, so good news on this one. There are numerous copies available at Noble Knight, actually, with Kickstarter exclusives. If you want the additional card, I might pick them.
Do you have the Kickstarter exclusives?
No.
What are they?
They're just additional cards. Might be more fake cards.
Oh, no.
But anyways, you can pick them up there. If you do, we would appreciate if you would support our friends, our sponsors at Noble Knight. You can use our discount code HGEMS. HGEMS, you put that in the discount code field, get 10% off your order. The game is also available on BGG. There are numerous copies on BGG, 26 to be exact. I misspoke in our last episode, and I was corrected by a few people. I said that the marketplace is going through some changes, and it is. There's currently a beta version of the marketplace. However, I did not realize that the classic marketplace is still working.
Oh, okay.
So you can go there and pick it up, and there are like 25 copies on there. So you can get it there as well.
Cool.
Nice. Well, those are our thoughts on Legacy Gears of Time. In Chrononauts, you're a time traveler with a unique identity, several different goals, and a yearning to return home. For you, the real world of today is an alternate reality. You grew up in a universe where something was different. Perhaps in your history books, JFK wasn't assassinated, but Adolf Hitler was. Maybe you're from a world in which the Russians got to the moon in 1969 instead of the Americans. Or perhaps the Titanic missed the iceberg in 1912, but sank anyway, in a different accident years later. Or maybe, just maybe, Humanity was destroyed by a nuclear war in 1962, and you're a super evolved cockroach from 100,000 years in the future. Whatever the differences were, you grew up in an alternate reality, and your first goal is to return to that reality. You're also on a mission. Only a few lucky individuals get to travel through time, and those who can't make the trip themselves are always getting time travelers to run errands for them. Perhaps you've been instructed to gather up some live dinosaurs, or fetch some stuff from the future, or grab a few long-gone items just before they were destroyed, for inclusion in some museum devoted to that sort of thing. Whatever the reason, you've been asked to travel through time to collect 3 items, and your second goal is to accomplish that task. But watch out! Other Chrononauts may be searching for some of the same artifacts, and with a time machine, your opponent can always get there first. Finally, you've got paradox repair work to do. Time travel is tricky business, and when someone changes history, there are almost always ripples and repercussions somewhere down the timeline, which tear holes in the fabric of the time-space continuum. These holes, called paradoxes, are created whenever someone changes a significant event. These paradoxes must be repaired, lest they start a chain reaction that could destroy the entire universe. So as a temporal mechanic, working for the Time Repair Agency, you've been trained to patch up these holes. Your third goal is to repair enough paradoxes to retire from the agency, or to get a promotion, whichever suits you better.
That's actually the rules of the game.
It really is.
It kind of is. All right, Chrononauts. Let's do this. Published in 2000 by Looney Labs, designed by Andrew Looney. Currently ranked on BGG 2,749. It's actually pretty close to Legacy there.
It is indeed. And if you don't know, Andrew Looney is the designer of Flux.
Gotcha.
I think that's important to state.
That makes a lot of sense.
It does make a lot of sense.
All right. So, brief rule summary of Chrononauts. In Chrononauts, the historical timeline is represented by a tableau of 32 cards arranged in order from oldest to most modern in a 4x8 grid. Each card in the timeline is some historical event, usually some pivotal moment like Abraham Lincoln's assassination, Pearl Harbor, etc. These cards are either linchpins or ripple points. A linchpin card can be flipped, reversing the course of that event to some other result, causing one or more ripple point cards to also be flipped. Ripple point cards flip to become paradoxes. Paradoxy. On a player's turn, he or she will draw a card from the common deck into their existing hand of 3 cards, and then play 1 card from their hand. There are many different cards in the deck, so I'm just going to highlight a couple of the most important ones. There are inverter cards, which are used to flip linchpin cards on the timeline, thus causing the ripple effect and creating paradoxes when ripple point cards are flipped over. Patch cards are associated to a specific ripple point on the board and can be played on top of that ripple point, assuming that it has previously been flipped over to become a paradox. Doing this causes the player to increase their hand limit by 1 card. Artifact cards represent various goofy historical artifacts, and when played are just simply placed on the table in front of the player. And then there are gadget and time warp and other types of cards that have a variety of effects that I'm not going to go into. So, what are players actually trying to accomplish then? So, I went through it in the very lengthy flavor text, but if you didn't pick it up then, at the start of the game, each player receives a card with 3 different objectives on it. One of these is to return home. This requires that 3 different cards on the timeline be in a specific state. For example, one particular event needs to be reversed, 2 other events need to be paradoxed and patched. Another objective on your card is to complete your mission. This involves finding and playing in front of you 3 specific artifact cards. The final objective is to achieve power and success. This involves increasing your hand limit to its maximum of 10 cards. If any one of these 3 objectives is completed at the end of a player's turn, they win the game. And that's it. In keeping with the theme, I'm going to ask the same leading question that we talked about with Legacy Gears of Time, and that is, did you guys get the feeling of time travel playing this game?
So I'll start us off. Surprisingly, I felt like this game captured time traveling really well.
What?
I really did. I would say of the 3 games we're reviewing tonight, this one did it the best.
I'm 100% with you.
And
Y'all are crazy.
I'm telling you. And I think why that is, I've mentioned this on the podcast numerous times talking about comic books. Mm-hmm. I love the idea of the multiverse. Mm-hmm. And to me, it's just so interesting that in this game, you can change an event in the past. And that's another thing before I finish this point is, the last game we talked about were inventions. right? Creations. These are actual historical events that you undo. You change them, right? And when you do that, you create a new reality. Those linchpins flip, and then those cause ripple effect cards to flip that become paradoxes. But if you patch them, then you can change history. History has been rewritten. The Soviets got to the moon first, right? That's now the history, right? And so to me, I felt like the time traveling theme really came through pretty strongly in this game, to be quite honest.
I'm 110% with you. I've been binge watching Timeless, and I've just cycled off Julie Andrews on my free pass list for Abigail Spencer from Timeless.
Julie Andrews.
So I've been watching that, and that's the whole premise of the episode, is they're jumping through significant events and times, like the Hindenburg, Martin Luther King assassination, all these different things. And
also Quantum Leap, right?
Yeah, it's Quantum Leap
Not
sliders.
Historical events, but changing history, right?
Exactly. And so this game, I was just tickled to go back and do these events and just see how they decided each thing affected 3 other things. And it was kind of funny. There were some pretty crazy connections that they had in there. There was like, how were these 2 things? Like not going to the moon, didn't allow Coke to happen? I don't know.
Yeah,
I mean, it was
some
just
of the
weird.
fun was trying to rationalize why certain things changing caused other things to happen, because sometimes they made sense and sometimes it was more of a stretch, but it was funny.
Yeah, I don't know. I see what you guys are saying. I think it's interesting the different angles we talk about this from, like in terms of how theme plays out. Is it the theme of what are you doing in the game, or is it the mechanics and how the mechanics make you feel as you're mechanically performing those actions?
Sure.
I think in Legacy, maybe the theme didn't come through as strong, but the mechanics of it felt like things that I would try to do if I was time traveling.
You're moving back.
Like going back and changing
you're moving
things,
left,
like literally changing control on things. In this game, you're flipping a bunch of cards that are altering historical events. Sure, that's time travel-y. But mechanically, I'm just flipping a bunch of cards over, and they're all connected, right? Like, this card's connected to that card, this card's connected to that card, I flip this card, that card flips. That mechanically does not feel like time travel to me. I don't know. I think it's interesting the different perspectives that we have on it, though. I think of the 3 games that we're doing tonight, this one probably felt the least time travel-y to me.
That's hysterical.
But I don't disagree with you guys that the flipping and changing of historical events, rewriting history, that's time travel to a T, right? But mechanically, I didn't really get much out of it.
All right. Good things to say about this game. I got to think here. Okay. So, I will say that I did like how this game had multiple ways to win. That's always a good thing, I think, if you can win in more than one way. So as Jason mentioned, you can get 3 artifact cards in front of you and win that way. You can win by manipulating the timeline in a certain way that you want it to look, or you can win by having 10 cards in your hand. We start with 3 cards. As Jason mentioned in the rules, every time you patch a paradox, you add a card to your hand, and if you get 10 cards in your hand, you win the game that way. I like that. Unfortunately, the game just totally self-sabotages itself. And the reason for that is 2 of those 3 things, the artifacts and the date changing, are completely random. And we'll talk more about this in a minute, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But the thing that gutted me the most about this game, and I'd be interested if y'all had thoughts on this or not, but having 10 cards in your hand at one time seemed like the only thing in the game where I can at least maybe control that.
Strategic.
Yes.
To some degree.
Strategic
very,
to some
very,
degree.
very small degree.
I can cause a card to flip and then patch it and get a card. I can control that. But then the game throws in these freaking time warp cards. That's like, take your hand and pass it to the left. So I could have 9 cards in my hand and Bill could have 3. I could be 1 card away from winning, and he could play that, and I would pass my 9 cards to him, and now he's 1 card away from winning. That is terrible.
Or take all the cards from everyone's hands, shuffle them, and then deal them back out evenly. Like,
Wait.
You just worked up to 9 cards. Guess what? They're getting dealt out evenly. So now you get the same as everyone else.
Unbelievable.
I want to ask, is this the fastest like section that you've had on any game on Hidden Gems? Because we have like jumped right into 2 feet into this.
Well, if you've got good things to say, Bill, you can go back to it. But I tried to start with a like, and then it just transitioned into a con. Because I thought that idea was a good one, that he then just sabotaged himself with a really stupid set of cards, right? I would have enjoyed the game more had that way of winning been viable, but it's just not because of those time warp cards.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of good things to say as well. I think really the only point that I had written down was that the time rippling effect is cool. And that's about as deep as I'm going to go on that point. Like, I'm going to jump back to the method of collecting artifacts. and talk about this in more detail, right? Because collecting artifacts, basically you need to get 3 specific artifacts based on your objective card and play them in front of you. But what that essentially means is I need to fish through the deck by just drawing cards. So essentially, I'm just fishing through this deck of 70 cards to find the 3 cards that I need. And if I manage to get those cards, then I win. And if I don't, then I don't. That's frustrating because it's like, well, we should just dump all the cards on the table and see who finds theirs first, right?
And it's highly lucky, right? I want Bill to chime in, but I just have to mention this because it complements what you said so well. There was one game we played of this where Eric Viol had all 3 of the artifact cards that I needed in front of him. Just randomly.
Right.
Like, literally, every card I needed was in front of him, and he didn't know that. Had he had my card, he would have won.
You should have just swapped cards with him, and then you'd have won.
Why isn't that card in the game?
Right. And he actually had a card that would have swapped that card, and he could have won, right? Because that was the game he had that card, that you could swap objective cards.
There was something he could have taken from in front of me, yeah. It was crazy. But anyway, Bill, I think maybe you liked this game better than Jason and I did. What did you think? Was there anything that you liked? Or maybe not. Maybe not.
No, not necessarily. What I come back to is having a good gaming group, and I would say, of the games that we played here, I think we laughed the hardest and maybe had the best time playing this game of all the games that we had here, at least on some level. Mm-hmm. And some of it might be you had to laugh to keep from crying kind of thing. So how crazy it was. But there was a lot of randomness going on. So
for sure.
I won't say that it doesn't have the potential of being fun kind of thing in the same way that maybe Betrayal's fun, even though it's woefully broken.
I think in certain groups this could be fun.
Right.
Depends on what you like. Right?
Exactly.
We talked about 2 of the 3 conditions for winning, the hand size and the artifacts. To be thorough, we should talk about the 3rd one, right? And you started, Bill, with the fact that every action that you do, if you're trying to be defensive, you're probably helping somebody else. Right, but the other thing with this win condition is that it's the same fishing through the deck for cards, right? Because 2 of the 3 cards that you need to have in the right position on the board are paradoxes that need to be patched. And the patches for paradoxes are tied to specific cards on the board.
Yes.
And there is only one.
A single one of them.
So that means
and it's a big
I
deck.
need these 2 patches, these 2 very specific patches, and if I don't get them, then they're not going to go out there. Maybe somebody else plays one for me. And this was the craziest thing.
Yes.
One game we played.
I was hoping you'd mention this.
One game we played, other players at the table patched both cards that I needed to be patched and flipped the 3rd card that I needed to be flipped. It just wasn't my turn yet, so I didn't win. But before it came back to my turn, both patches had been reversed, which, by the way, means that those patch cards go in the discard pile, which means they're never going to be seen again. And my 3rd card had been flipped back. So at that point... There's no chance I'm winning this game, right? My 2 patch cards are in the discard, and everything has been reversed back to the beginning. So that just shows the ridiculousness.
But what's crazier, we played one game, and I can't remember how it happened, but Jason, you won in literally 5 minutes.
Oh, it was less than that.
I mean, the game was over in 5 minutes. Somehow, some magical combination of card flips happened, and Jason was like, I won.
Right.
We're like, what?
I drew all 3 artifacts that I needed in the first 3 turns, and then I was just done.
And on that game, I would have won if it had gotten to me, because Jason was to my right, and I had the winning conditions to win if he hadn't won. So it was crazy.
Insane.
Yeah.
All right. I don't think we have anything more to say about this game.
No.
Let's go on to final thoughts.
Let's do it.
All right, I'll kick us off this time. This game is unbelievably random. Games can end in 2 minutes if someone draws the right cards. I'd say maybe this is okay as a party game, because we did laugh a lot.
Yeah.
But unless you love randomness for randomness sake, this is not going to be for you. Like I said, we had a few laughs, but they were mainly over the sheer ridiculousness of what was happening, right? Not laughs at how we were playing and stuff that the game was bringing to the table. It was more stuff that we were laughing at about the game and how ridiculous it was.
Right.
The things that were happening. So I think this one is not for me. I give this one a 2.
Okay. Yeah, I agree with everything you said about the fun, quote-unquote, factor of the game. We did laugh a ton in this game. And I would say at times we were having fun. Mm-hmm. Does this mean that I think this is a good game? Absolutely not. I think this game is terrible. But we did laugh a ton. And I equate this to, I don't know if you've ever had this experience where you watch a really bad, cheesy B movie, and it's just so bad. The acting is bad. The writing is bad. The special effects are bad.
Like a slasher movie.
Yeah.
You're laughing at everybody.
But you still watch it, and it's memorable. And you have fun, but you know you'll never watch it again. but it still sticks out in your mind as that was a fun experience.
Yeah, I will remember playing this game for sure.
For sure. I say all that to say this. This is one of the reasons I'm glad we do this podcast. I'm glad that I have played Chrononauts. This podcast enables us to play games that we wouldn't normally have and lets us have really neat experiences, even if they're bad ones.
That's true.
Will I ever play this game again? No, probably not. Am I glad I played it? Yeah. Do I recommend it? Probably not. Not unless you like that kind of thing. Some people love it. Flux is a very successful game. Flux is like this game. It's random as heck. If you like Flux, you'll like this game, I think. But for me, I can't recommend it. It's too wild. So all that to say, I give it a 2. 2 with some laughs.
Okay. Well, that's funny. I will say I want to play this with my family at the beach just because I think it's funny, and partly because I just love the time traveling thing. I think this kind of nails it in a way that the other games here don't do, just manipulating the events. But I'm 110% with you. There really isn't much game here. Winning and losing is totally about being lucky, and it is truly playing a slightly more complicated version of bingo, right? Because it's like, because any particular turn somebody could win and you would have no idea why. And for that reason, I gave it a 3. But it was still fun. Yeah. It's a fond memory that I'm going to hopefully bank away and remember. So.
Well, I will say Eric Viol, after we played it the night he was here, he said he wanted it. I mean, he enjoyed it.
Yeah.
So, like I said,
you can't have this one, Bill.
I know. And I was
it's
like,
not
too
yours.
late. That's not, oh well, that's all right.
Well, if you do want to pick it up, there are several copies available on Noble Night. Again, you can find it there. Use our discount code HGEMS. Also, 12 copies on the classic BGG marketplace as well.
Awesome. And that's our thoughts on Chrononauts.
My faithful companion, the Master Clocksmith, came to speak to me this morning, revealing a fabulous secret. We can travel in time, my friend. Not just dreaming about it like my astrologist does, but actually going there. I can hardly believe it. There seem to be periods in our future where the strength of our walls will be nothing compared to the strength of our collective faith. Or an even stranger future epoch where the people will rule themselves. The Master Clocksmith has convinced me that our power is now limitless. Our lands and domains are ours forever. My opponents will not wait, and my lords have already started preparing for their journeys. My dear friend, come with me, for from this day forward, I will be remembered as the king who forged our own destiny. Quite literally. Hiktmat, great lord of the Western lands.
Nice. That was a little different than normal. I liked it.
Yeah. Very kingly.
That's right. Khronos, published in 2006 by Madigo and Rio Grande Games. At the time of this recording, its BGG ranking is 3,134. Designers of this game are Arnaud Urban and Ludovic Viala. They're known for a couple of games. A game called Utopia that they co-designed, and then Arnaud Urban also designed The Secret of Monte Cristo board game. I will mention that before reviewing this game, I had never heard of this game. I bought this game in Revenger's huge auction, actually.
Oh, yeah?
I think I told you about this game a while ago because I found it in the mining exercise.
Well, maybe that's why it came to my mind. So, to be totally honest, when I bid on it, I was thinking it looks cool, and maybe in my mind somewhere I had remembered you telling me about it, but I didn't know anything about it. So I bought this one on a whim, really.
I will say I was super bummed when I found this game because I had been thinking through and brainstorming a concept around designing a time-traveling game that is almost exactly this game. And I was like, dang it.
So we beat you to it in 2006.
I know, right?
All right. Brief rules summary for Khronos. This summary is going to be a little bit longer, and it is not at all comprehensive. Okay, so we're going to be filling in a lot in our discussion, I think. But I have to cover this stuff, or you're going to be lost. So I'll go through it as quick as I can. In Khronos, the players are primarily constructing square-shaped military, religious, and civic buildings in the past that will then ripple forward into the future, affecting the size and makeup of different groups of connected buildings, which are also known as dominions. So it's important to understand that term, that a dominion is a group of connected buildings. The shared playing area in Khronos is made up of 3 large square gridded boards. These 3 boards, from earliest in time to latest, make up the ages of might, religion, and reason. The landmarks and art present on these 3 boards appear exactly the same at the start of the game. In addition to the board, there's also a deck of cards present in the game made up of equal numbers of orange, purple, and blue cards. Each player starts the game with 4 cards, and at the start of a player's turn, they have the option of spending 2 coins, which is important to understand that coins are points in this game, so anytime you spend money, you're spending points, to discard any number of cards from their hand and redraw back up to 4 cards. They can do this only once. Now the players can move their workers and construct buildings. Each player controls 2 workers, and each worker can use up to 2 cards each turn. If a player wants to do something on the Age of Might board, for example, they will have to move one of their workers, traveling through time, to the Age of Might board, which will cost them 1 coin. You can move your workers back and forth through time as much as you want in this game, but every time you do, it will cost you a point. When a player plays cards from their hands, they build buildings of the matching color. For example, if a player plays a single orange card from their hand, it will allow them to play a small 1x1 size orange building to a board, wherever their pawn is. If the player chose to play 2 orange cards, they could play a medium-sized 2x2 orange building to a board. It's also important to note that players can pay differences in cards to upgrade to larger buildings. So, for example, you can upgrade a 2 building to a 4-value orange building, which is 3x3, by paying the difference between those 2 buildings, which would be 2 cards. It's very important to note, if you don't get anything from my rules explanation, get this, that when players build buildings in the past, all of those buildings will ripple forward in the same location on the future boards, as long as the building is not a small 1x1 building. If a building ripples forward in time onto a board where another building already exists, the pre-existing building gets destroyed in a temporal paradox and is replaced. It's as if it never existed at all. All buildings built or upgraded on the earliest Age of Might board earn the player 1 coin, while those built or upgraded on the second Age of Religion board earn the player 2 coins. In addition, at the end of the 4th and 7th rounds, a scoring will occur at the end of each player's turn. On the earliest Orange Age of Might board, the players will score points for each dominion, so again, a group of buildings they control, and control is based on who owns the single largest orange building in that dominion or group of buildings. And the points earned is equal to the total value of all blue civic buildings present in that dominion. The middle Purple Age of Religion board scores similarly, but is based upon who controls the largest or most valuable purple building present in each dominion. Finally, the third and final Blue Age of Reason board is unique in that no building can be built on this board. All of the buildings present on this board are present there because they rippled there from a prior turn. Players can spend their turn to move to this board and play blue cards from their hand in order to place cubes of their color upon the blue civic buildings occupying them. At the end of the 4th and 7th rounds, if they have the most cubes on civic buildings in a dominion, they will score points based upon the values of the orange and purple buildings present in that dominion. Again, not the blue buildings, so it's kind of opposite of the other 2 boards. After the 7th round scoring has occurred, players will add up their coins, and the player with the most coins will be the winner. And that's generally how you play Khronos. Now,
so easy.
I left out a lot
Mergers.
regarding mergers, because I know we're going to talk about it. So you too, when you talk about this, make sure you fill in some of these rules about that, because I didn't want the rules to go on too long. But there are some things that happen when 2 dominions connect, or disconnect even, which makes the game interesting, I think. Okay, introductory question. Do you guys feel like Khronos captured that time-traveling feel, specifically surrounding its main mechanism, this rippling effect? Buildings you build in the past ripple forward into the future, and you can manipulate that. Did it feel time travel-y to you?
Oh, to me, absolutely. I like the fact that you could see all 3 eras at once, and when you did something, it affected all 3 of them. Like you said, it's almost like looking at the multiverse, right? And you had that third eye point of view that you're watching it all happen across time at once.
You're looking at like hundreds of years of space-time
exactly,
at one time.
All at once, yeah. Very much a God level kind of thing. So yeah, I thought it captured it really well.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I don't think I have much to add to it. I think that being able to see the 3 boards and seeing the effects happen on each board was pretty cool. Especially the building a building on a previous board that destroys a building in the future because it's in the same location. I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I agree. I got a time-traveling feel from this one as well. And really, I think what you alluded to, Bill, it kind of had that hand of God feel to it. You know what I mean? There's an old game, I can't remember what it is now. It's a Civ game with the hand of God floating around and creating things. But
Populous?
Populous, yes.
Yeah.
I could not think of it, but yes, Populous. It felt like that to me. I felt like I was doing that, which was kind of cool. And the rippling, I think, is just a really neat mechanic. It is super mean.
Super mean. Super confrontational.
Super confrontational. This game can get in your face in a moment. Right from the go, this game can be in your face. And a lot of that is due to that rippling of building a building somewhere and wrecking somebody's building on the board of religion. You may be asking yourself, why would people not just always build on the board of might, so the earliest board, so you don't get rippled and destroyed? And that's a good question. It'd be interesting to know y'all's thoughts on this, but I thought it was very clever that you basically get double points if you build on the middle board.
Right.
So you're risking getting destroyed, but you're doubling your score, basically, if you do a lot on that board, which kind of incentivizes you to do things on that board at times. I thought that was really clever. What did you guys think about that?
Yeah, I liked the trade-off. I question if it's enough of a trade-off to warrant the risk sometimes. I found myself getting destroyed a lot because of trying to do that. But yeah, it definitely adds some tension and some decision points to the game that I think are important.
For sure.
One of the things I was kind of surprised at was how quickly this game plays. I mean, I feel like it's a pretty deeply strategic game.
7 turns.
7 turns, and it scores on 4th and 7th turn. And whatever strategy you have manifests pretty quickly, or doesn't manifest, or gets screwed up very quickly. And I thought that was kind of cool for a game as deeply as strategic as I think it is, to have it play as fast as it does.
Yeah, that's definitely true. When I found this game in our mining efforts, I remember perusing the rulebook just because I was curious. And I was like, this game would be cool to do for the podcast, but it's going to take us like 4 hours to play it. And it's not. It's not a 4-hour-long game. It's an hour-long game.
For sure.
And
you can get locked up in this game, though, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
AP.
And that kind of goes into maybe some of the cons. I don't know. Are we ready to go there? Do you have
No.
more pros? No? All right.
I have more good things to say about
it's
this
not
game.
Chrononauts.
All right. Carry on.
So, this is one of those games that I feel like I wish I could have played it more before we reviewed it. And we played it a few times, but this is one of those games, every time I play, I feel like I learn something. That's always a good sign with me. There's a lot of interesting, clever things that you can do in this game. Uncoupling yourself from a dominion to build yourself back up and hooking back into somebody to overtaking them. Building your buildings in such a way to where your opponent cannot expand. So I didn't cover this very well in the rules, but having the largest building is really the most important thing in this game, of a certain color. You want to have the biggest orange building. You want to have the biggest purple. And everybody at the table knows that. And if Bill and I are fighting over a territory, if I can situate my buildings in such a way next to him to where he can't make his buildings bigger, then I'm a threat to him, right? I think this game is ripe with clever ideas, and we're just not even getting it all yet, I don't think. At least I don't think I am.
Yeah, I fully agree with you on that point. I remember Cavum came up several times while we were playing this, right?
Similar
some of
feels.
the parallels. If you haven't listened to that episode, definitely go back and listen to it. That was one of my favorite games that we've reviewed on this show. But yeah, a lot of parallels there. Every time you play, you're discovering new angles to the game. I'm going to carry that into my next point, which is that it feels like you can be forced into a situation of losing a lot of time in this game. And Chris, you experienced that in the game that I won, and I experienced it a lot in the first game that I played of this when you guys had already played it once, and you know, I just got destroyed, right? Yeah, and because of this race to the top for a domain, you would think, well, okay, just build another domain, get to the top there and join it in and overtake it, right? And that sounds great, and that's what the game is encouraging you to do. But it's real hard to do that. And you don't have a long runway in a game that only has 7 rounds.
Right.
It's a setback.
It's a significant setback.
But it's not something you can't overcome. We saw games where somebody was able to reestablish themselves and hook into somebody and take control of dominions.
Well, I will say that there was a game that how to be modest about this, I absolutely dominated in. It was Jason's first game. But one of the things that I did was I was dominating on the might board. And on the religion board, there was a competition on the domains. And it just turned out there was a corner of a couple pieces that I could take out by building in the might domain that gave me the ability to turn an absolutely losing situation into a winning situation. So to your point, Chris, I could have easily lost that if that had not manifested.
Yeah, that was a fun game. game. Jason's first game. It was so funny. Every time Jason played down a building, Bill was to Jason's left. Every time Jason played a building, Bill destroyed it.
Yeah. I made absolutely no progress.
Blood drain out of Jason's face. And Bill was killing us.
And I'm sitting there like not even understanding what's going on. Like not even understanding why what just happened.
And it was funny. I think I made a statement. I said something along the lines. So we just call this game because Bill was so far ahead. And I knew he was going to win. And he did by a lot. And then Jason, you said something like, do you think that's a good thing? And I thought about it for a second. And I'd say, I do think that is a good thing. To get beat so badly in a game to where you're like, let's just call it. Because what that tells me is that it's very strategic. Bill had an understanding of the game that you just didn't have, right? And me even had played it with him. He just outplayed us. I think games like Food Chain Magnate fall into that category. That's why people either love them or hate them, because your decisions matter so much. If you're playing somebody that has a bad strategy or knows the game, they will get killed. You will get killed. And if you play this game, Khronos, with somebody who's played it several times, you're going to get destroyed.
Absolutely.
I'm telling you, you're going to. But to me, I don't see that as a bad thing. I think that says to me that your decisions matter in this game.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. My counterpoint to that is the second game that we played that I won. Part of the reason that I won, a big part of the reason that I won, I attribute to the fact that you and I, Chris, got into a competition on the purple board.
Yeah.
Over who was going to get to the 5-size building first, right?
And you hooked into me.
The race to the top.
Yeah.
And I connected into a thing, and I downgraded you to a 3, right? Because when it gets into a merger competition thing, one of the buildings has to get downgraded. And that sets you back pretty significantly.
But that was my fault.
I question that, though.
No,
right?
I don't.
You keep
I feel like I
saying
just played poorly.
What would you have done differently?
Built somewhere else not so close to you.
But you built there first, right? 5
you were
first,
before
right?
Me. I was last in turn order. You were first. The reason I built there is because I thought I was being a jerk to Bill by hindering him from expanding his orange building, which ultimately didn't work out. But my thought process was, man, this really brings me probably closer to Jason than I would like to be. But after how badly you had played the first game, I thought
he'll never do this.
I was like, he'll never hook into me. And I will tell you, you learned.
Yeah.
The way you played in the second game versus the first game was so different. And that's because you had figured things out. And I took a risk, and I got punished. For me, the only con really that I had, I think is legitimate, and I think this must be said, because I was the one that had to learn this game. This game is hard to learn. Your turns are simple, and it's fast, but understanding what happens when buildings are built where and when dominions are connected is not very intuitive. I read this rulebook 5 times before we played, and I still wasn't confident before we started. So much so that I almost scrapped this game from the podcast. I mean, I was close. Had we had another game that would have worked time travel-wise, I would have. Now, I'm glad we didn't. And once we played it, we started to figure out, but just understand that this game is hard to learn because it's hard to wrap your head around.
Yeah, you need to have somebody who has a very solid understanding of it. Because I will say, learning to play it, and I even understood some of the high-level concepts of what the game was about. But coming into game night and learning the game, you're going to be lost as heck the first game you play of this. I went through the entire first game, and I was like, I don't understand a single move that I took or why it was good or bad. All I know is that Bill crushed me. Then somehow it sort of started to click a little bit in the second game. I think if I played it again, I would have a much better handle on it. But you just have to know this is one of those games. All right. Let's land the plane with our final thoughts here.
Okay. A lot of interesting discussion there. Is it my turn to start?
I think it is.
Oh, gosh.
Oh, it was me. Okay, cool.
All right.
Bias us.
That's right. I think games like Khronos are the ones that make it worth it to me doing this podcast. I kind of mentioned this last review with Chrononauts, but that game sucked. I didn't enjoy Chrononauts. This game I enjoyed a lot. And I will be very clear, it was not because I was good at it. I only won one time. I got beat pretty badly a few times playing this game. But again, to me, that's a good thing. Whenever I lose badly in a game, it's just showing me I'm not getting it. And I would just think about this game after we played it. And I would just keep thinking of ideas of things to try. That is always a good thing. Is this game for everybody? No, I don't think so. It's very confrontational. You need to be aware of that. It is very hard to learn. You need to be aware of that. However, I have also seen online that some people compare this game to Tigris and Euphrates in space-time.
Yeah, it has a lot of similarities. I have not played Tigris and Euphrates a lot. I've played it a few times, but it does have a lot of similarities.
Yeah. I've discredited myself on this podcast several times, owing up to the fact that I still haven't played Tigris and Euphrates, but I have heard several people say that it reminds them of Tigris and Euphrates, but taking place across 3 different boards at the same time. That sounds interesting to you. You should look into this game. I think this game is pretty great. I'm giving it a 5. I'm excited to play it more and explore it. Like Jason mentioned, it reminded him of Cavum in a way, and it reminds me of Cavum in a way too. They're 2 different games, but I got similar feels of, I just feel like I'm scratching the surface. I'm going to give it a 5. Jason, what do you think? I'm curious what you're going to say about it.
Yeah, I'm kind of curious to hear what I'm going to say about it too, honestly. I've been thinking about this game a lot. I absolutely hated this game the first time we played it. But I think that's mainly because I hate feeling like I can't grok how to play a game. And it didn't help that I was playing against 2 people who had already played it several times, right? So that's just a recipe for misery for me. That doesn't make it a bad game. I talked about Cavum earlier in this review, and if you listen to that episode, I gave Cavum a 6. I absolutely loved that game. This game has a lot of similarities to that in the fact that the depth of the strategy is there. I feel like there are depths to be plumbed there to find all the strategies that can work. I'm not as keen on this game as I was on Cavum, and I've had to think about why. I don't know that I can fully quantify why, honestly. I think some of it is maybe just personal preference, personal taste in the different mechanics that are going on. I do think that the confrontational nature of this game factors into it a good bit. This game is mean.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Right? And that doesn't...
From the opening bell.
Yeah, and mean games are not always bad games. I probably gravitate a little bit away from super mean confrontational games, but that doesn't mean it's a bad game. I think in this one, that combined with the opaqueness of it, there are just so many ways that you can get screwed in this game and not even know it's coming. And I guess part of that goes into that depth of strategy, right? The more you play it, the more you understand the strategy, the more you understand the ways you need to play defense.
That's what intrigues me about it, yeah.
But there are so many ways that you have to play defense in this. I guess that just adds to that depth of strategy. I don't really know what I'm saying, I guess, in all of that, other than to say that overall, I see the merits of this game, like you said, Chris, and I think that they're there. But for me personally, it didn't drive me to want to dig into that strategy quite as much as I think it did for you. I would definitely like to play this some more. I gave it a 4.
Okay.
Which is probably a surprise to you, honestly, after our first couple plays. But
you did get that win in.
He did. Got a win, and he got an apology text message sent in the next day. So.
I was pretty grumpy that night. I said some mean things to Bill. But I apologized to him before the episode, so it's okay.
Yeah, well, I agree with both of what you're saying. I'm not going to jump much into the details of the game. I'm going to comment a little bit on the gaming group that you find yourself in. I think that if you have 3 or 4 people who are willing to play this game multiple times and get to the level of expertise where you can start exploring strategies together, I think those strategies are going to start to manifest, because I think we've just scratched the surface for
sure.
So anyway, I'm going to give this game a 4-2. I think it's awesome. I think it has a potential being 5 if we started playing 3 or 4 more times. It's funny that if you invite somebody else in, we felt Jason's pain of having to come into this behind the 8 ball of not having to play it, and it's just an interesting game of bringing somebody else in the fold, and it's just hard to do because there's so much depth to it.
Yeah, that's a good point. Bringing in new players to try to introduce them to the game, you have to preface it by saying you're going to lose this first game.
Right. You need to play 3 or 4 times
to be okay with that, and then after that it will get better. But that's going to happen here.
Yep.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, how available is Khronos?
Incredibly available. It's available at Noble Knight. Pretty affordable too, so you can use our discount code there. Again, HGEMS. And there are 35 copies on the BGG Marketplace for as low as $15.
Wow, really?
Yeah.
Whoa.
Can you believe that?
No, I can't.
It's a big box, too. This is a big box game. It's kind of like the size of box that Matago was doing when they did Kemet the first time.
Yeah.
It's that size. It's a nice game. All right, I think that's it. And those are our thoughts on Khronos.
Well, thank you so much for joining us on this episode of Hidden Gems. If you're enjoying what we're doing here on the podcast, and we hope that you are, please remember that it's a huge help to us when folks like yourselves give us a rating or review on the various podcast platforms out there, or when you follow us on social media. If you're so inclined, please consider supporting the show over on our Patreon at patreon.com/hiddengemspodcast. Check out our BGG Guild for the latest goings-on, or if you'd like to interact with us or share a game that you feel is a hidden gem. Until next time, I'm your host, Jason.
This is Chris.
This is Bill.
Thanks for listening.
This episode of Hidden Gems, number 34, was recorded in Raleigh, North Carolina on June 5th, 2022. Everybody remembers the Spiel des Jahres winners, but what about the losers? Join us again in 3 weeks as we travel back in time to 2014 to take a look at 3 games that were recommended for the Spiel des Jahres award that year, but lost. Hidden Gems is produced and edited by Chris Alley, Cameron Lockey, and Jason Yanchuleff. Our Board Game Geek Guild is monitored and managed by honorary Hidden Gems team member Ghidorah. Our show's logo was illustrated by designer and artist Katelyn Nieto. Check out her work on Instagram at It's Katelyn Nieto. We would love to hear from you. Feel free to join the discussion on our many social media accounts. You can find us on Facebook at Hidden Gems Board Game Podcast, Instagram at hiddengems.podcast, and Twitter at Hidden Gems Board. Disagree with one of our reviews? Have something you want to say about one of the games we discussed today? You can also make your voice heard on our Board Game Geek Guild at BoardGameGeek.com, Guild number 3874. Once again, thank you for joining us on Hidden Gems, and until next time, fellow gem seekers, enjoy your games and enjoy your search.